Hey everyone, welcome to the Formula Consulting Group. In this video, we're going to reveal a proven strategy you can use to match into your preferred residency program. Not a backup program, not a malignant program, not a leftover program, but a preferred program in a competitive specialty. Before we get into exactly how this strategy works, let's start with an introduction of who we are. We're a team of advisors that specialize in helping candidates break into highly competitive industry. Though this course focuses on how to match into your preferred residency program, our expertise transcends the medical industry. In the near future, we will release courses that focus on how to break into other lucrative markets. So how do we help you break in exactly? We help candidates break in by teaching them a targeted, process-driven strategy that was developed in-house by our team. We call this strategy the formula. There are 4 characteristics that make our formula effective. The first characteristic is that the formula was developed by industry insiders. Not professors, not academia, not medical students who graduated but decided to do research, not medical students who graduated and matched, but the programs they matched into were not preferred programs, or the specialties they matched into were not preferred specialties. Our industry insiders matched and are currently working in top residencies across top specialties. But more importantly, they matched into programs that they actually wanted to go to, and they achieved this by using the formula. The second characteristic is that the formula is comprehensive. It walks you through and prepares you for every single step you need to take to stay ahead of the competition and strengthen your candidacy, so that the programs you want will want you back as well. Unlike other services that gloss over the details, the formula is all about the details. And that's because the difference between those that match into competitive programs and those that went unmatched for advanced programs was less about scores, publications, and pedigree, and much more about the details of the candidacy, details that the formula will cover. The third characteristic is that the formula is customizable for each candidate. The problem with most advice on how to achieve a successful match is that advice is not specific to you. We know from trial and error that there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all when it comes to positioning your candidacy for the match. And that's because every candidate has different strengths and weaknesses. The formula is designed to take those weaknesses into account and spin them into strengths. And the fourth characteristic is that the formula has been tried, tested, and refined across multiple programs, multiple specialties, and multiple interview cycles. One last thing we should go over before jumping into the formula is the disclaimer. Though most people understand that there are no shortcuts to success in any industry, it helps to go over this concept once more. The same logic about there being no shortcuts applies for matching into your preferred specialty. The formula does not guarantee that you will match. The formula does, however, provide a process that may increase your probability of matching when executed correctly. The formula is most effective when the candidate focuses on attention to detail, invests considerable time, effort, and preparation into the process, and implements every applicable step of the formula. So what exactly is the formula? The formula is a series of 10 steps designed to increase the probability that a candidate will match into one of their top preferred programs. These 10 steps should ideally be implemented in chronological order and should be thought of as spanning 3 different phases. Those 3 phases are the pre-interview phase, the interview phase, and the post-interview phase. In this video, we will touch briefly on how to implement each of these 10 steps in order to provide a high-level overview of the entire process. However, in subsequent courses, we will delve into much more detail and dedicate entire videos to each step. The first step in the pre-interview phase is to overhaul the writing style used in your application materials. By this, we specifically mean the writing style in your personal statement, which should reflect a storytelling structure consisting of 3 acts. These 3 acts should be written in a simple and efficient narrative prose that avoids overly formal, technical, and academic jargon. Aim for the casual writing style used in GQ articles, short stories, and New York Times best-selling books. The easier it is to read your statement, the more positive the reader will feel about your candidacy. Ideally, any document containing a statement about you should reflect this same writing style. This includes your cover statement, ERIS application, supplemental application, MSPE, emails, and letters of recommendation. In future videos, we will discuss how to best position yourself to provide edits, input, and even a draft of your recommendation letter to the letter writer to ensure that you receive a high-quality letter. For those of you who are wondering what a cover statement is a similar concept to a personal statement, except it's usually only requested when applying for residency positions out of cycle, meaning you either didn't match into an advanced program and are still looking for one, or you are currently at a program that you want to transfer out of. The new program you're applying to will request that you explain in a cover statement, separate from your personal statement, why you think you didn't match, or why you are looking to switch programs. The second step in the pre-interview phase is to establish your personal brand. Personal branding items will experience high usage by your program, since you will attach them to almost all emails you send to solicit interviews, to thank interviewers, to express your intent to rank, and for follow-up communications. The purpose of having a personal brand before the interview is twofold. First, it makes the program more familiar with you before the interview. Secondly, it makes your candidacy appear more attractive by showcasing your professionalism and work ethic. This is a step that a lot of students skip because they view it as just a bunch of details that don't really matter. But again, the difference between those that match and those that didn't is usually in the details. There are 4 main ways to establish your personal brand. The first way is to create a professional custom email signature with your headshot, contact info, and AAMC number. The second way is to create a non-errors CV that is expertly formatted to fit into one single page. Too often, candidates attach 2, 3, and even 4-page CVs to emails that are sent to program directors. This is ridiculous for several reasons, not least of which include the fact that nobody has time to read a 3-page CV. And you should also consider that if the CEO of Pfizer, the founder of Tesla, and the President of the United States each have a 1-page CV, you too should be able to summarize your accomplishments into 1 page. The third way is to create a personal website with your picture, qualifications, resume, and background. This is a great mechanism to showcase in more detail your other accomplishments and publications. And finally, the fourth way is to create an MP4 file with a 5-second video of your preferred program with a custom message. Unlike the custom signature, the non-error CV, and your personal website, the MP4 file is a personal branding asset that should only be used in certain cases. Research the program and program director to determine if they have the type of culture that would appreciate or be impressed with this type of gesture. The third step in the pre-interview phase is to solicit interviews. This may seem self-explanatory, but believe it or not, there are several medical students that believe that because they have high test scores, multiple publications, and serious pedigree from top schools in the US, all they have to do to get interviews with top programs is to apply through ERAS. And though this approach may work for a select few, it is not effective for the overwhelming majority of applicants. The number of candidates applying to residencies has increased almost 20%, especially for top specialties like radiology. The key to securing interviews with preferred programs is to start soliciting these programs long before the interview cycle even begins, using our specific methodology, which we will dive into in future videos. Unfortunately, most candidates wait until several weeks after they've applied through ERAS to try and contact programs that they haven't heard from yet. But by that point, it's too late. Most interview slots will already have been filled. The fourth step in the pre-interview phase is to generate pre-interview exposure. You might be tempted into believing that the only exposure you should really have with your interviewer are the 10 to 15 minutes you're afforded one-on-one with them on your interview day. But that's wrong. The more exposure you have with your interviewer before the interview date, the higher your chances of matching into that program. This is because the more contact you have with your interviewer, the more opportunity you have to build a genuine connection with that person, which in turn puts both you and the interviewer at ease the day of the interview. It also helps to break the ice before the interview, which helps the playing field for the candidate, and it also makes the power dynamics less disproportionate, and it makes the tone friendlier. Have you ever shown up to an interview and noticed how there's always that one candidate that seems to know every interviewer on a first-name basis, jokes around with them, and hogs up all the conversation? Most of the time, it's candidates that have a legitimate advantage because they rotated through those programs. But once in a while, it's a candidate that has never rotated through their program, but instead hustled their way into familiarity with the program director and the interviewers by using this exact formula to generate pre-interview exposure. Think about it this way. You spend 8 years of your life pursuing a medical education at the expense of your personal life, your family life, your financial resources. And at the end of the day, what is the one thing that decides whether you actually get to become a doctor in the specialty that you want? Not your hard work, not your sacrifice, not your dedication. The thing that decides your entire future in the medical field is actually just 10 minutes in some room with some person who will probably forget about you the moment you walk out of that room, because they have a long day, a long week, and a long season of interviewing a bunch of strangers, most of whom they will never see again. There are different ways to generate pre-interview exposure, and we'll discuss those ways in more detail in a later video. The fifth step is to due diligence your interviewers, and this marks the beginning of the interview phase. It's called the interview phase because at this point in the process, even though you haven't had any interviews, some programs will have notified you that you have been scheduled for an upcoming interview. A few days before the interview, you'll typically receive an email with the names of the people who will interview you. And this is very important. The reason it's important to have these names is because you are going to research every single one of these interviewers ahead of time in order to compile what we refer to as a due diligence report. This due diligence report will contain the following: as much information about this person as possible, both on a professional and personal level, talking points and questions engineered specifically to create rapport with your interviewer, and a game plan to steer the interview in a direction that favors your candidacy. The talking points, the questions, and the game plan will be created using the information you have collected about this person. We cannot stress enough how effective this step is. It's so effective that by the time you leave the interview, the interviewer will feel like you two are best friends. In future videos, we will teach you how to source the names of your interviewers from programs that don't automatically send them to you in advance. We will also walk you through exactly how to create these due diligence reports, including where to find the specific personal and professional data about your interviewer, how to digest and interpret that data into meaningful information, and how to use the report before and during the interview. The sixth step is to anticipate the questions the interview will ask you. And it's pretty obvious why this is important. Anticipating the questions allows you to prepare and memorize the best possible responses to those questions. By the time you step into that room, you will have practiced your answers so much that they will sound absolutely natural, conversational, and organic. Kind of like a method actor going into an audition. You'll be so much more prepared than your competition that you can actually enjoy the interview, crack a few jokes, and come across like a confident, likable person. And those due diligence reports you created from step 5 will prove helpful in this objective as well, because it will help you to design your answers in such a way that are relatable to your interviewer as well. The seventh step is to send strategic thank you notes. This is also the first step of our final phase, the post-interview phase. The key word here is strategic. Most people send thank you emails after an interview. It's not a new concept by any means. In fact, so many people do it that it's reached a point where more and more program directors no longer even read these thank you emails, or they have their coordinators collect them into a folder that never really moves the needle for the candidate one way or the other. However, despite being a common gesture that has become routine, there is a real opportunity here to stand apart from your competition and strengthen your candidacy in the eyes of your interviewers. In future videos, we will discuss how to do this in detail, including keywords and phrases that should absolutely be included in your thank you note, techniques to ensure 100% that the program director and your intended recipients actually read your thank you note, a method to maximize the timing of your thank you note, and clever delivery options. The eighth step is to send strategic letters of intent. Again, the key word here is strategic. Letters of intent have also become more popular in recent years. Though not as universally used as thank you emails, it's by no means a new concept. And because it's become much more widespread, the novelty of this gesture is starting to wear off. That's why the key word here again is strategic. Letters of intent are a bit more tricky than thank you notes because they require two important arguments that need to be articulated clearly and effectively in the letter. Those two arguments are, number one, a convincing argument for why you are the strongest candidate for their program. And number two, an equally convincing argument for why their program is the best fit for you. The danger with sending letters of intent is that they may give the impression that you are not genuine about ranking their program, or that you are sending the same letter to multiple programs. In future videos, we will discuss exactly how to avoid this in detail, including using the most important sentence that absolutely 100% needs to be included in your LOI, the most effective narrative structure for your LOI to make it stand apart from the competition, the delicate timing of when your LOI should be sent, and several other techniques to ensure that your LOI actually moves the needle and has a material positive impact on your candidacy. The ninth step is to generate post-interview exposure. This step is obviously similar to step 4, which we covered previously in the pre-interview phase, with a few key differences. The first difference is that you've had significantly more exposure to the program compared to when you started the process. You should therefore use this exposure you've had with program directors, assistant program directors, chief residents, and coordinators to run a gut check and ask yourself, how competitive am I for this program? If the program director has indicated directly or indirectly that they will rank you to match, then you may not need to spend further resources to generate post-interview exposure with that specific program. But if, however, you feel there's a real chance another candidate may beat you on a marginal basis, then you absolutely want to focus on generating post-interview exposure. The second difference compared to step 4 is how you go about generating post-interview exposure. There are several ways to do this, which we will cover in much more detail in future videos. But a few examples include requesting to stop by their office to clear up specific questions you have about their program. But unlike in step 4, the optics of this request are much more delicate because you are officially now in the ERA cycle. This means some program directors may be hesitant to grant you a visit to their office because they feel this request may violate ERA's rules and give you an unfair advantage. So the manner in which you request this office visit has to be just right to put the program director and the program at ease. Another example is to request to join additional meet and greets, diversity and inclusion programs, and other official events of the program's calendar that will offer you the chance to create additional points of contact. Doing so also makes a strong impression on coordinators, who in turn pass their impressions along to the program director. The 10th and final step is to establish third-party validation. Establishing third-party validation refers to having someone with credibility, authority, or a reputable track record in the industry pick up the phone and call the program director to recommend your candidacy. Earning this validation could be the icing on the cake that seals your deal. Let's go over a real-life example that occurred recently in the 2023 cycle. This particular candidate applied for residency as a couple along with his wife. Both applied for radiology. The wife matched into a program at a large city, but the husband did not. The husband panics, rightfully so, and starts asking people in his network who have credibility, authority, and a track record to pick up the phone and call the program director of every radiology program in that same city to recommend his candidacy because he wants to go to a program within the same city as his wife. And they did. And despite the match being over, and despite soap week being over, and despite everyone telling him to give up, move on, or take a gap year, lo and behold, a program that had already filled every available spot on their roster and had already given out every last offer for the year was so impressed with the amount of phone calls he was receiving on behalf of this candidate that the program director contacted CMS on a one-off, applied for additional funding for an additional resident, and actually received it. The request was accepted. Now this student has a radiology spot that didn't even exist at the start, middle, or even at the very end of the match process, all because a few people made a few phone calls on his behalf to validate his candidacy. Now that we've touched on the 10 steps that can help you match into your preferred program, let's wrap up with a pro tip on how to navigate the surplus of information that's out there regarding match strategies, some of which may seem conflicting. There will always be a group of people that will tell you it's not necessary to go above and beyond, or that it's a waste of time to try the steps we just covered, or even that it's a waste of time to apply to top specialties unless you went to a top school, made top scores, and published vast research. But when you hear this type of advice, ask yourself, what is this person's motivation? Are they really trying to help me? It helps to ask these questions because there are 3 types of people that will usually give bad advice. The first are candidates who are competing for the same positions you are and don't want you to out-hustle them. So they make it sound like going above and beyond is not really necessary. Yet in private, that's exactly what they are doing. They are hustling, they're going the extra mile, and they're trying to outcompete you. The second group are candidates who are naive or are unaware of the level of competitiveness in recent match cycles, and they truly believe that the things will work out eventually regardless of effort. Most candidates fall into this category, and most of them will be disappointed when match week arrives. And the third group are candidates that are naturally gifted at interviewing. They can show up to an interview unprepared, wing it, and get the offer. These types assume everyone else is equally gifted, but that's just not the case. In reality, and in our experience, the majority of candidates do not fit this profile. The majority of candidates, if they don't prepare extensively and implement these steps, will limit their probability of matching. So if a person falls into one of these 3 categories, you may want to think twice before taking their advice. And that concludes this video. If you want to check out our upcoming videos where we deep dive into each step in greater detail, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. You can learn more about our services at www.formulatomatch.com and on Twitter at formulatomatch.